Hello, my name is Roger Pine. I'm with Holistiplan, and I'm here today with Aaron Gray. He is the Managing Director of Client and Advisor Experience at Buckingham Strategic Wealth. Aaron, so good to be with you today. Thank you for joining me today.
Absolutely. Fun to be here. Thanks for having me.
You missed the memo about the dress code. I'm wearing the tuxedo.
So
today.
I can run down. I have a powder blue. I don't know if that's going to clash with what you got going on.
Yeah, we'll edit that in later on for the
Perfect.
thumbnail. You with the powder blue tuxedo. Thank you for joining me. This series is Winning with Holistiplan. We really are trying to cover how people use technology to make their client experience, their advisor experience that much better. Holistiplan, of course, is just one piece of every firm's tech stack. And what's interesting about you is you're here representing Buckingham Strategic Wealth. By RIA standards, huge firm, and multiple offices, multiple advisors coming in from different backgrounds because some of them have come through acquisitions, so they have their own way of doing things. Beyond just the managing a big company aspect of that, there's also the service delivery piece. How do you establish service standards? How does Buckingham approach? I know this is a big question, but how does Buckingham approach that problem as an organization?
Well, I mean, and there's so many dimensions to that, right? Because there is just the pure tech stack part of that in terms of how do we set up everybody with a full, toolkit. And then certainly there's the service delivery in terms of how we want to set our standards of what the client experience is going to be. And it is important to us in our model to have the client experience for a client that is working with somebody out of our Palo Alto office to be very similar to the experience somebody's working out of the Short Hills office in New Jersey and everywhere in between. And so it's a little tricky because we're distributed teams, about 45 offices or so across the country, about 200 advisors in total. We work as teams. So those 200 advisors kind of group up into a lot of sub teams there. But there's challenges in terms of individual advisors' personal backgrounds. A lot of us in Buckingham, is not me, but we have a lot of CPAs or enrolled agents that are really comfortable with these tax conversations. I don't have that tax background. I know enough to be dangerous enough to pass the CFP test. But that was, that's one of the things that we want to do is kind of back to my analogy of the toolkit is let's fill the toolkit with a lot of really good tools and resources. A lot of that ends up being fintech that puts all of our advisors in a common position to deliver very consistent advice and really think about not only set the standard of here's what we want to make that experience, what we want to deliver as a part of our client experience, but then also kind of standardize the backstage tool set that all of our advisors are using. So, it's one thing to say, hey, everybody, we want to make doing an analysis of whether Roth conversions make sense for our clients. That's something that we want to make a part of an annual conversation with clients. Cool, it's great to say that, but if we don't have a common tool set that allows us to do that the same way across teams, across locations, you end up really delivering very different advice. And so there's a lot of dimensions. It's really tricky, and I'm happy to get into details if you want me to dig into any one of those, but certainly relative. And I was, by the way, Roger, I was one of those offices that was not a part of Buckingham. It was small, independent, 4 of us working in downtown Denver, and eventually got acquired by Buckingham. I've been with Buckingham now for about 6 years. So we did have our own tool set and our own ways of doing things. So I did experience that kind of coming into a bigger group and then understanding what the new challenges are when you have a lot of distributed folks and a lot of distributed locations and trying to unify what that tool set and the client experience ends up looking like.
Sure. Yeah. And I, just working with your firm a little bit, watching from externally, I know there's a lot of training organizationally. You do a lot of, you just got to take the time to, first of all, develop what are our standards going to be, hash that out, present that to everyone. Clearly, a lot of infrastructure has to be built just in talking about how do you communicate these things. When we talk about the technology piece, because that's kind of why we're here. When let's say, to use the example of Roth conversions, maybe that's a good example or not, you can tell me, but you as a firm start with, this is a thing that is a priority for us, or tax planning, or whatever it's going to be.
You got it.
And then there's a decision about, do we already have this tool in-house? Do we already have something that does this, presumably, or Do we build something or do we go out to market? How does the organization go about running that project? Is there a specific team that's there looking at all technology decisions? Do you form each time a group of experts? Like, how do you actually go through the process of making a new technology investment, specifically with the idea of that investment, delivering these kind of standardized service models?
Mm-hmm. It's so we attack it from a few different angles. I think one of the biggest, most meaningful inputs to that analysis or that evaluation is our clients. And so we have obviously we get anecdotal feedback from clients or advisors about, hey, here's, running with our Roth conversion example, there's a lot of opportunity, or we think there's a lot of opportunity to move the needle for clients in this way, but what's the best way for us to be doing that analysis? And those questions come back up through my group. They come up to our chief planning officer, and we have a kind of a task force, or we call ourselves the evidence driven planning committee. So we sit down and get to argue about like the best ways and what the evidence really tells us about the best ways to do certain planning topics. But I think kind of where I started with the clients, we have a systematic annual survey that we'll send out to clients. We've kind of built that into the expectation of the experience with the clients. And the important thing about that is we'll preface it. We'll send a unified message from our leadership saying, hey, this annual survey time, we try to make it a very painless experience to go through the survey. But the key thing is an example last year when we, in setting it up, saying, here's the stuff we learned from you last year and the things that we actually implemented or the things that we're moving towards, message directly to clients from Buckingham saying that your feedback matters and we're actually using this to make decisions and move forward. So you set that up, you do the survey, you collect the data, the information that's really important to you at that point in time. And then that is, that's a treasure for us because we can look and see what feedback we're getting from clients. And that is a big piece. It's not the only piece we're paying attention to. Obviously, we want to get feedback from the advisors and understand what areas they feel like there's room for improvement in terms of efficiency or being effective with what they're doing, whether it's just the analysis of the planning conversation or actually delivering the planning conversation with the client. So those are the two key inputs. And then we go try to solve for it. And sometimes it's just a better resource. Sometimes it's tools, it's workflows that we can build out so that folks, we do have a point of view on how to do something. And maybe we already have a tool that does it, inside of our planning software, for example, but folks just don't know exactly maybe how to use that tool or how how the pieces fit together there. So sometimes we just create the workflow of making sure the resource exists so we know how to use our existing tool set. And in the case of when we ended up partnering with Holistiplan, we just didn't have a tool set that allowed us to do it. And we had some advisors that were doing it, on a calculator, and some that built some spreadsheets, or some that were just, looking at a tax table and kind of making some guesses. And better than anybody else that there is, for as simple as that might seem, to fill up the rest of your friendly tax bracket if you're doing a Roth conversion, there's so many snakes in the grass that can jump up and get you if you're not really looking at all the angles. So that was an example where we knew we needed something better to kind of fill that need for us. And then obviously after looking at what Holistiplan did, not only did it help us in that specific area, but then it brought a lot of other stuff to the table that really helped us move the needle in the end client experience.
So that it sounds like you have like a council of a planning standards sort of council. I may be using the wrong words for it, and that group is a standing group, it sounds like. And not only is there to set standards but they also evaluate tools. So it's not like separate groups, like an IT specific group is separate from the planning group. I mean, presumably you have stakeholders from each of those groups.
You got it. And that's the thing. And so the fun thing, relative to when I was 4 people, kind of a small boutique independent RIA, and now part of something bigger with Buckingham is we gain scale to do a lot of cool, interesting things. So we do IT is a part of this. Now they don't know whether, one planning tool is better than the other planning tool. They're not planners. They know how to make the bits kind of talk to each other or get the databases to link up. So that rolls, and that's why we have an advisor and client experience team that I lead, where we'll take that feedback and say, we need to solve for X, but not really thinking about X as kind of a delivery or a better, more efficient process for our advisors. And I said that could be fintech, it could be other things. And then my small team will go out and kind of canvas to see what are the options. So then we'll go look and we'll do some initial valuation of the of what's available from a fintech standpoint. Then we'll narrow the funnel a bit, and then we'll come back to our committee and share our findings, do some demos. Let's let everybody kind of kick the tires, ask the hard questions, so that we can feel really confident by the time we're making a decision to sign a contract, do an implementation, that we have the right tool that's going to really deliver on the needs that we have.